What happens when one of America's favorite talk show hosts goes head-to-head with a comedian famous for pushing limits? The result was nothing short of explosive. Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist who has filled arenas worldwide with his bold puppet acts, ended up in a confrontation that no one expected. Kelly Clarkson, usually the image of warmth and optimism, revealed a side that left her audience stunned and her guests storming off the set. The air was thick with tension, the words sharp, and what began as a normal interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments in talk show history. This was not rehearsed or planned for attention. It was raw, real, and unforgettable. Before we break down what really happened and how things went so wrong, hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts. Did Kelly go too far, or did Jeff cross a line? The show began as usual. Kelly walked onto her bright, colorful stage to loud applause, flashing her famous smile that made her a daytime favorite. The crowd buzzed with excitement, ready for heartwarming stories and easy conversation. When Jeff Dunham was announced, the crowd erupted. Whether people loved or disliked his humor, they couldn't deny his massive following. Jeff came out with his trademark confidence, holding his puppet case, waving as cheers filled the room. Kelly hugged him warmly before they sat down, both smiling for the cameras. At first, everything seemed easygoing. Two entertainers chatting about comedy, tours, and life in the spotlight. Kelly opened with compliments, praising Jeff's success and asking how it felt to still be filling arenas. Jeff responded with humor, saying he never thought talking to himself through puppets would take him this far. Everyone laughed. But soon the tone shifted. Kelly began asking about how comedy had changed, wondering if Jeff ever felt out of step with the times. Though she kept her tone friendly, there was a clear edge. Jeff noticed it. His grin tightened slightly, and he said that comedy is subjective, that his job is to make people laugh, not to chase trends. Kelly nodded but didn't stop there. She asked if he ever worried about offending people, mentioning how sensitive audiences had become. The word sensitive lingered. Jeff leaned back defensive and said, "Comedy has always been about pushing limits, making people uncomfortable to make them laugh. If everyone feared offending others," he said, "comedy would die." The crowd's response was mixed. Some clapped, others stayed silent. Kelly's smile wavered for a moment before she asked the question that set everything off. She asked if there was a difference between pushing limits and being plain insensitive. Jeff's jaw tightened. He asked what she meant. Kelly didn't back down. She said that some comedians hide behind the excuse of being edgy when they're really just recycling stereotypes. Jeff laughed dryly and said it sounded like she brought him on the show just to lecture him. The audience gasped. Kelly's tone turned serious. She said she invited him because she respected his career, but also believed people with platforms should consider how their words affect others. Jeff replied that responsibility was just another word for censorship, and if comedians worried more about being careful than being funny, they stopped being comedians. Kelly fired back that caring about people's feelings wasn't censorship, it was basic decency. The crowd fell silent. Jeff leaned forward, raising his voice, saying comedy isn't about decency, it's about truth. He claimed that if Kelly couldn't understand that, maybe she didn't understand comedy at all. That hit hard. Kelly's face flushed, but she kept calm. She said she knew comedy well enough to tell the difference between clever satire and cheap shots, and hiding behind a puppet didn't make a cruel joke okay. It made it cowardly. Jeff turned red, stood abruptly, and the crowd gasped. Kelly stayed seated, staring up at him. He pointed at her and said he'd worked for decades, earning his success, and didn't need a lecture from someone famous for being nice. Kelly stood too, voice sharp, saying being nice didn't mean being weak, and that doing something for years didn't make it right. Jeff snapped that this was the problem. People like her always trying to control others. Kelly shot back that expecting growth wasn't control, it was accountability. The tension was unbearable. Jeff said he hadn't agreed to be ambushed on live TV. Kelly said she hadn't ambushed him. She'd just asked honest questions. And if he couldn't handle that, maybe he wasn't as sure of his work as he claimed. Jeff grabbed his case and said this was a waste of time. Kelly called after him, asking if he was really walking out over a disagreement. Jeff stopped and turned, saying the difference between them was that he made people laugh, and she made people feel good, and only one required real talent. The words hit like a knife. Kelly's face went pale as the audience reacted with gasps and scattered applause. Jeff turned to leave. Kelly stood frozen, then anger flashed across her face. She called after him, saying talent wasn't just about making people laugh, it was about connecting with them and lifting them up. Jeff paused, then turned back, frustration and hurt visible on his face. He said he'd connected with audiences for decades, giving them permission to laugh at life's absurdities. Kelly said that wasn't brave, it was lazy. That true comedy challenges people instead of mocking them. Jeff said she didn't understand real comedy, that she lived in a safe bubble where the biggest risk was singing a cover song. The insult was personal. Kelly stepped closer, saying she didn't need puppets to hide behind. Jeff said his characters represented human truths, and that she was too shallow to see that. The audience erupted with chaos. Kelly's voice cut through the noise, accusing him of using stereotypes for cheap laughs. Jeff argued that punching down was a phrase people used to control what comedians could say. Comedy, he said, had no rules. Kelly answered that art without responsibility was just chaos and that she built her career on kindness and honesty. Jeff said kindness was weakness, that the industry was full of fakes, and at least he was honest. Kelly said honesty without compassion was cruelty, and that maybe he'd performed for so long, he'd forgotten how to be real. For the first time, Jeff went quiet. The crowd felt the shift. Jeff said she didn't know his life or what he'd been through, that it was easy for her to talk about compassion after fame came from a reality show. Kelly said nothing was handed to her, that she'd fought for everything, and that this wasn't about careers, it was about choices. Jeff said entertainers shouldn't have to fix the world. Their job was just to make people laugh. Kelly said that when millions listen to you, your words matter. Jeff threw up his hands, saying everyone was too sensitive now and that comedy used to be fun. Kelly said she wasn't asking him to stop being funny, just to think before speaking. Jeff said trying to please everyone was pointless. Kelly replied she wasn't asking him to please everyone, only to consider everyone. That silenced the room. Jeff picked up his case again, saying the conversation was over, that he'd expected professionalism, not a personal attack. Kelly said it was only an attack if he felt guilty, and that she'd just asked questions he should have asked himself. Jeff said he didn't feel guilty for making people laugh, that she could keep her moral talk and he'd keep doing his job. Kelly said softly that making people laugh and treating them with respect weren't opposites. Jeff didn't reply and left. Kelly stood watching him go as the audience sat frozen. A producer came over whispering, but Kelly waved them off. She looked into the camera and said that what happened wasn't planned, that real conversations can get heated, but they're important. She said she believed in having uncomfortable talks, that laughter and kindness both matter, and she stood by what she said. The audience clapped slowly, then louder. Backstage, Jeff walked fast toward his car, ignoring crew members. He slammed the door and sat in silence, anger boiling but mixed with unease. Watching clips online later, he saw himself losing control, realizing maybe both sides had stopped listening. Back in her dressing room, Kelly sat quietly, shaken. She had hosted countless shows, but nothing like that. She hadn't wanted him to walk out, she just wanted honesty. Maybe the real story wasn't the fight, but the fact that both believed they were right. Maybe things were more complicated than they seemed. So what do you think? Was Kelly right to challenge Jeff, or did she go too far? Should Jeff have stayed and finished the talk, or was walking out his only choice? Share your thoughts below and hit subscribe for more stories like this.